Thank you, Pastor Juan. What an introduction. Wow. No idea who wrote that bio, by the way, but I love it, and I might just use it for my website. Well, it's so great to be with you all today. Thank you all for coming out. Raise your hand if you're either in or have been in 40U or LTC. Just curious? Nice, nice. Great to see you guys. And raise your hand if you have never heard me speak or watched any of my content on YouTube or anything like that. Oh, okay. Nice. I actually prefer that because my students have heard me blather on about the same teachings a million times, so it's nice to have fresh faces for that. So I want to start by saying this. I had an epiphany 2 nights ago when I flew in on Friday. This is my second time ever in Miami. I love Miami. I would probably move here if I could. But I've always heard people say, oh, Miami, it's a city that never sleeps. You've probably heard that before. City that never sleeps. And I always thought, like, how weird is that? Like, everybody loves sleep. Why would you not want to sleep? So we get into our Airbnb, and we're like, right on the Miami Beach. What is this street? Collins? Or we're like right on it. Yeah. So I get there Friday night, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get some good sleep tonight, rest and recharge, long day of travel. You already get where the joke's going. So I'm laying there, and I doze off to sleep, and then I hear some insane person just screaming at the top of their lungs, 4 floors down. We're pretty high up, and it jolts me awake. So I'm not really good at falling asleep. It usually takes me a while. And so I lay there, fall back asleep, and then I hear this monstrous Lamborghini engine wakes me back up over and over till like 3 a.m. And I'm starting to get a little more frustrated. I'm reaching that threshold, And I finally woke up to like the 15th noise, and I just had this thought like, does nobody sleep in this city? And then I was like, oh, the city that never sleeps. Now I get it. So I did wear earplugs last night, so I got some good sleep. I'm rested and recharged. But I only have 20 minutes to talk today-ish, and if you've ever been in my programs or whatever, you know that it's a miracle if you can keep me under 30 minutes. So I'm going to do the best that I can. But I was thinking about like what core concept from the book I would want to touch on in 20, 25 minutes. And the 3 beliefs, it sounds like you guys are already somewhat familiar with them. But the way that the 3 beliefs were sort of revealed to me through my experience was through my emotions, was through contemplating and trying to come to a deeper understanding of what my emotions are. Because, we really suffer only from our emotions, right? Primarily 3, sadness, anger, and fear. And there's many different flavors of each one of those 3 kind of like root negative emotions, right? With sadness, there's depression, hopelessness, shame, sorrow, etc. Anger can be irritation, jealousy, rage, frustration. And fear can be anxiety, paranoia, stress, so forth. But they're all just different flavors of the same kind of 3 emotions. And so when I had my big spiritual awakening at 27 on the balcony of my Googleplex gym that I worked at, weird place to have an awakening, I came out of that sort of this 2-week experience of bliss and oneness and spiraled back down into, hell, essentially, where I had been living for many years in my 20s after I deconstructed religion. What do I believe about God now? I don't even know anymore. Maybe I'm an atheist. Got divorced from my Christian wife, moved back in with my parents in California at 26, starting my life over, feel like a total loser, have no friends, don't know what I believe anymore. And it was just this perfect recipe for a dark night of the soul. And that dark night of the soul was the greatest gift of my life because I often will say, like, when you're living in hell, we've all been in hell before, right? It sucks. It's not fun. But when you've really been to heaven, and very few of us have truly been to heaven in that regard, and then you come back down into hell after having been in heaven, it is much more insufferable, trust me. But it's a very good thing because what it does is it gives you, what I believe, are the kind of 2 primary ingredients for real liberation or enlightenment. The first ingredient is you've got to actually believe it's possible. Awakening, freedom from suffering, freedom from the egoic thought system. You've got to have a deep conviction that it's possible. Because what I realized is, before that experience, I didn't actually believe it. I had read the books and studied the teachings, and I could probably explain them really well. But deep within me was still this lack belief that no, freedom from suffering isn't available to the human being. Maybe some small degree of it, but not real freedom. And after spending 2 weeks in a state of absolute freedom and bliss and oneness, now I could not argue with that fact anymore. Freedom from suffering is absolutely available to the human being if you're willing to do what it takes. And that's why the subtitle of the book is called A Sufferer's Guide to Freedom. That's the first ingredient. The second ingredient is like an all-consuming, burning, passionate desire for freedom. Meaning you've got to be tired of the third density world. You've got to be tired of ego-driven living and the rat race of it. It's got to become like dirt and dust to you compared to the treasure of heaven, right? If you don't desire freedom more than the pleasures of the world and so forth, you're not going to get it. And that's a classic Enlightenment teaching. So once I had those two ingredients, I was off to the races, and I started to really investigate myself, almost like I was trying to back engineer myself into that state I was in for 2 weeks of how come I was so free and happy? I couldn't even remember what suffering felt like for those 2 weeks. And we've probably all had glimpses of a state like that, right? Maybe for a few hours or even a few days. I had it for 2 full weeks. And so I said to myself, what was not there that's here now? Why am I suffering now and I wasn't suffering for those 2 weeks? And quickly it was, these three emotions. I suffer from feelings of sadness, all sorts of sadness. I get angry, I get frustrated, and I get afraid and fearful and stressed out. So once I knew, hey, it's really just these three emotions that I suffer from, then the next question kind of birthed itself, which was, why do I feel sad when certain things happen instead of angry, right? Like when a loved one dies, why don't I get afraid when a loved one dies? I don't, right? We get sad when a loved one dies. I could give you more examples, but you get the point. And the answer to that question became obvious. There has to be some kind of deep subconscious belief that is driving that emotion. And once I understood that, it's kind of funny how this happens, right? You start to tap into a vein, and then the universe will just bring you like the resource you needed to fully unlock it. And it was, I want to say it was either Esther Hicks or Bashar or somebody, I heard teaching this phrase, the emotional guidance system. And it just like clicked for me. Oh, it's a guidance system. And I began studying it more and utilizing it more. And I realized that, wow, we've been completely, propagandized almost to think about our emotions as like some kind of indictment on who we are. Like, if you're depressed, something's wrong with you. If you're angry, you shouldn't be angry. That's bad. You can't trust your emotions, right? They'll lead you astray. We've all heard that. And what's funny is it couldn't be more opposite of the truth, right? Our emotions are reflections. They're not directions. They're not telling us what to do. Your sadness, your anger, your fear never tell you what to do because that's impossible. An emotion is not conceptual. An emotion is a sensation. It's a pure feeling, pure sensation. It doesn't carry conceptual information with it. Do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. It's the ego that adds the narrative onto the emotion and kind of weaponizes the emotion to convince you to do the thing it wants. But the feeling is not to be blamed, right? So if what we all say we believe is true, if we're one with God, one with truth, if the truth is in me, then that must mean that my own state of being has to become my ultimate barometer for my quality of thinking, my mindfulness, right? If I'm feeling negative emotions, I know for sure my thinking is out of alignment with truth in some way. And isn't that great to be able to know that? Like, you actually don't have to do so much mental gymnastics on the spiritual path. You don't have to go chasing the tail of the shadow forever. What is this trauma linked to? Was it my childhood abandonment? Was it my first breakup? And we often do this, right, in shadow work. It's like, what was that first trauma that caused this dysfunction I have? And the truth is, traumatic experiences don't actually cause anything. The beliefs that underlie them, which we all come into a human lifetime kind of prepackaged with these beliefs, lack, attachment, and control, Traumatic experiences just reinforce those beliefs we already carry, and they give evidence to the mind's beliefs. And then we believe the story. And so much of shadow work and healing is about releasing the story you have attached to the emotion, right? So what I love about the emotional guidance system, and really like just this whole concept of the 3 beliefs of ego, is it simplifies this whole sort of confusing process of shadow work and trauma healing, which can sometimes feel so difficult. Once we know, hey, there's only 3 possible root beliefs causing this suffering. And really it's just one, but we use the belief in separation often, right? When we talk about unity consciousness, and then there's separation consciousness. But what is that? What does it mean to believe you're separate? Because none of us really have that as a belief we connect to. Like none of us ever feel, I'm separate. It's just a concept, right? What does it mean to be separate? It means I think I'm lacking. It means I run out to the world trying to fulfill my happiness and outcomes. That's attachment. And I try to control everything in my life that I'm afraid of or that doesn't go my way. I'm the doer, I'm in control, I make things happen. Those are the 3 beliefs of ego, which is kind of the way the ego acts out separation. Does that make sense? Separation doesn't mean anything outside of how it demonstrates itself in your life, in your behaviors, in your thinking. So once we know our emotions are actually linking us to each one of those 3 beliefs, now we've got a really clear, concise path forward. All I have to do, I don't have to think my way through every problem. I don't have to compartmentalize everything. I can just pay attention daily as like a spiritual practice, as a way of being. I can just pay attention to how I'm feeling, my state of being. Because guess what? Your state of being never lies to you. And it couldn't, right? Nobody in this room could possibly wonder how you feel in this moment. I can just say, how do you feel? And you immediately can tell me how you feel. It's the closest thing to us, is our own state of being. So once we know that, my own state of being is the ultimate guidance mechanism. Then if I feel sadness for any reason, I know immediately what the root cause of that sadness is. I believe I'm lacking something, period. It is impossible to feel sad in any way if you don't believe you're lacking anything. You have to have a belief in lack. I've lost something, I'm lacking something. So once I know that, I can bring that feeling of sadness closer to me rather than push it away or try to suppress it or avoid it. I can say, thank you, sadness, for coming to warn me that I'm holding a lack belief in my mind. And then I can actually ask the emotion, like a friend, like a friendly messenger, please, sadness, come closer. Tell me, what do I believe I'm lacking? And in my experience, when you treat your emotions like this, like a faithful servant, a faithful messenger, right? They love to give you the right answers. Your feelings want to show you the answer. But they don't show you conceptually. They sort of point you in an intuitive way. And so when you ask sadness, what do I believe I'm lacking? And you sit with it, something will come up like, I just feel like I'm lacking purpose in my life. Or I feel like I'm lacking connection in my life. But some lack belief will present itself. And that's where we know, once I identify the lack belief, then I can requalify it. We're not going to talk about that today because that's, again, I'm going to go over my 30-minute time limit. But suffice to say, if you can just do that, if you could just be aware of your state of being, tune into what emotions, what negative emotions are being felt, and bring the emotion in, welcome it as a friend, and ask it to show you. Anger, thank you for showing up today, to show me that I'm clearly attached to an outcome here. Anger, please show me, what am I attached to? And then your anger comes up and it says, no one should ever talk to me that way. Ah, there's my attachment. No one should ever talk to me that way. Isn't that amazing how your inner being will give you all the answers? When you feel fear, thank you, fear, come closer. Please show me, what am I trying to control in my life? Or sometimes I like to say, fear, where am I not trusting God? Because that's what control is. Whatever you're trying to control in your life is just somewhere you don't trust God. That's it. So these are the ways that I teach my students, I've written in the book, like this is the simple form of shadow work now, where we know it's always one of 3 beliefs. It can't be anything else. The ego has no function at all outside of lack, attachment, and control. So for those of you who may have somewhat different, like the Jungian or the Steiner perspective on the ego, there's many great models of ego, and I like them all. The model that I work with that I find to be the most applicable is this model, lack attachment control. The ego is not your personality. It's not what makes you unique. In fact, the ego actually hides your uniqueness, makes you feel insecure and want to cover up and not really show who you are. The ego makes us all like automatons. We all kind of become the same. We all have the same triggers and pride and selfishness. Your soul is your real personality. Your soul is your real expression, and the ego just can only cover that up with wrong beliefs and wrong understandings. So that's why it's so important, guys, for us to be monitoring our state of being and our thinking and just always bring ourselves back into alignment with truth. That's really all the practice is just get back aligned with what's true. Because the ego is 24/7, 365, right? It's trying to pull you into its thought system of separation, lack, attachment, control. You're not good enough. You need to go get this to be happy. And so if the ego is always doing that, shouldn't we probably be at least equally as diligent to shift our thoughts back in alignment with truth? Probably, right? Or the ego is going to keep winning the day. So it just requires like an internal love of or commitment to truth. Simple. Like, I just don't want to think out of alignment with what's true. I don't want to believe things that are wrong and false. Because what is false leads to suffering. What is true leads to happiness. So in this way, if it feels good, then it's true. If it feels bad, then it's not true. But in what way? And I'll kind of begin wrapping up here. What do our emotions really speak to? As we've already said, they're not directions. Like when you feel angry, the anger is not telling you to knock this guy out or cuss this person out. No, that's your ego saying that. The emotion can't be saying that. The emotion's just a sensation. So how do we become aware of this in the moment other than our feelings? There'd be no way, right? If you're not practicing monitoring your state of being throughout the day, that's the ego's greatest weapon against you is your feelings. So when we know that my negative emotions, and negative, by the way, doesn't mean bad, it means contracting in its function, right? It's constricting. And positive doesn't mean good, it means expansive. What makes you feel expansive, right? So my negative emotions are showing me where I'm out of alignment with truth, and my positive emotions are showing me where I'm in alignment with truth. So when someone compliments me or is kind to me and I feel a joyful emotion, that's the universe in me saying, ding, 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 that's correct. You're loved, you're appreciated, you're good, right? Whenever we think these thoughts, it feels really good because it's true. But it's true of what? Not the ego, our soul, our spirit, our true nature, right? So we've got to look past the surface layer a little bit because the chief mistake we've always made with our emotions is to believe that they're speaking to our circumstances. Again, telling us what to do. And so one of the concepts I really tried to lay out in this book is that your emotions are never speaking to your circumstances. Your emotions are reflecting your self-perception. And this is such a huge point to get. It's easy to get this as a concept, I think, but it's harder to get it as a living understanding. That my emotions are always correct. My emotions never lie to me. So whenever I need to connect with what's coming up, the emotion is the closest place I can go to get the information. And what do we do so often is we don't like the emotion because it's uncomfortable. And so we try to avoid it and resist it. But this is the reframe that helps. My emotions only speak to my self-perception. They only reflect how I'm seeing myself. So if I think about myself in a way that is out of alignment with how the Creator sees me, I will always feel a negative emotion. And thank God, right? How awful would it be if it felt good to think wrong things? You would have to incarnate 1 billion times in a human lifetime over and over again because you would always end up with the wrong beliefs at the end of the incarnation. Thank goodness God made wrong thoughts feel bad. If you and I, Juan, are driving together on a road trip and I fall asleep at the wheel and you're in the passenger seat and I'm, turning off towards a cliff or something, in that moment, you're not going to wake me up gently, right? Whisper into my ear, wake up, buddy. We're all going to die. You would probably just slap me on the back of the head, wake up! And maybe at first I would be mad at you, right? What are you doing, man? Asshole. And then I look in front of me and say, oh, we're heading toward impending danger. And I would slam on the brakes and avoid certain death at the last moment. And then I would turn to Juan and say, thank you, man, for slapping me on the back of the head. Right? There are circumstances where that would be a real thing. So we should come to see our negative emotions like that. They're warnings that we're getting out of alignment with what's true. So we should never see them as the bad guy or push them away or whatever. We should say, thank you for slapping me on the back of the head. Thank you for alerting me to the danger that's present. So our emotions only speak to how we see ourselves. And in a very real way, guys, you only experience yourself. Everything you experience in life, every person you meet, every moment in your life, you're seeing it, you're experiencing it through what? Your own mind, your own prism of Aaron Abke and my thoughts and beliefs and opinions and biases. I experience everything in the world through Aaron Abke's perception, not your perception, and vice versa. So in a very real way, you only experience yourself. And once you know that, to me, it's kind of the core missing concept for the human being, I think, is that humans, we place everything outside of us, right? That's the belief in separation. The problems are outside of me. The world is doing it. My ex is doing it. My lack of finances is doing it. And the good news is there are no problems outside of you. All the problems are inside of you. And as A Course in Miracles says, right? Thank goodness that God placed the answer where the problem is. Isn't that good news? A problem. Let's go. Let's go. A problem implies an answer, doesn't it? Even in mathematics, if there's an equation, a problem, then there's an answer to the problem. That's the way our universe works. So that's a demonstration of, it's a fractal, right? Everything is like that. If there's a problem, the solution is where the problem is. Or as A Course in Miracles says, salvation must be where sin is. Because what is salvation but the undoing of sin? What is truth but the undoing of falsity? So we have this ability immediately in our own state of being to undo what is false and untrue within ourselves by tuning into the feelings and knowing that they are our direct communication line with Source within. My feelings are always infallibly true. They could never, ever be wrong or lead me astray. But I have to understand what they are. And we humans have not done a good job of that, right, on our planet. But once I understand, they are reflections and barometers to my thinking, the quality of my consciousness. Then all feelings, negative and positive alike, become equally friendly messengers to me. They all become my allies on my path of spiritual growth. If a king, right, from ancient times is in the middle of a war or something, and he has a messenger ride in on a stallion from 50 miles away, and he runs into the castle and falls before the king and says, "Lord, the armies are approaching. Prepare the troops." The king is probably not stoked to hear that news. It's probably not like good news, right? Oh, the armies of the enemy are approaching. But would the king kill the messenger for that? No, right? That's where we get the phrase from. Don't shoot the messenger. And that is what we have done to our feelings for most of our lives, right? We shoot the messenger when actually they're just here to help. And so all they can do is be recycled and come back up again with the same message over and over. And it's actually not your childhood abuse, your abandonment, your first ex that dumped you. It's not any of those things. It's at the core of who I am, I believe that I'm fundamentally incomplete, that God made me unfulfilled in some way and left me to this life of running around the world to find my fulfillment. And would a loving creator ever do that? I certainly don't think so. So we've got to become convicted of that. My creator made me perfect, whole, and complete. But I can only enjoy my perfection, my wholeness, and my completeness to the extent that I can become aware of it and begin living like it's true, right? We've got to start showing up differently in our life. And so somebody who doesn't suppress their emotions or see them as enemies and run from them and so forth, they show up in their life as what we call authentic. And we all love an authentic person. We all universally don't like being around people that aren't authentic because we're like, I don't know if I can trust you. And so what is that? What is authenticity and inauthenticity? How do we all know when someone's being authentic or inauthentic? I could meet somebody today and they could be interacting with me and I could know that they're being inauthentic even though I have no clue what this person's real personality is like. We can just feel when someone's not being genuine, right? Why? What is that? And my offering to you is that it's this bypassing, avoidance, suppressing of our feelings. We all do it to varying degrees, but somebody who's afraid to show who they are, it's because they are in a war with part of themselves, usually a big part of themselves. And so this is about coming to peace with who we are. And we cannot do that, my friends, until we come to peace with our feelings, our emotions, and knowing that the Creator did not give us anything that is bad for us or harmful to us, not even our painful emotions, right? Even those are good, and they help us get back into alignment with truth, the truth of who we are. So that's the premise of what I tried to deliver and distill in this book. And I'm going to be doing book signings and a little meet and greet in the back after the service, which I'm really looking forward to connecting with some of you guys. But that's just a little taste test. If that message is calling to you or resonating with you today, then I think you're going to really be blessed by the teachings in this book because it's a little more than 20 minutes to read. So thank you all so much for having me today. Truly such an honor and a pleasure. I think I told you this is my first time even being in a church service for almost 13 years. So it's truly a treat. Thank you all so much.